and welcome to, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to what is the sixth in our inaugural Communicating Your Science series. Today, we're going to focus on tools for science thought leadership. And I was thinking this morning about how excited I am today about today's event in particular, not only because of the very talented and generous presenters that we have who are going to share tools that I think that will really be useful in helping each of you develop your voices as thought leaders, but also because I was thinking about how incredibly important it is to have diverse voices and knowledge in the sciences, helping us as humans move through this particularly challenging moment in time. And so today we're going to focus on sharing some opportunities and steps that you can take to be those voices that can help people make informed decisions about how science affects their lives and their community. So I'm Sean Rhea. I am the media manager I am the media manager at the Graduate Center at CUNY, and I very specifically focus on the sciences. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit first before we get deep into the tools about what exactly do we mean when we talk about thought leadership in the sciences. And so broadly, a thought leader is a person who is an authority in a particular field, in your case, the sciences, and whose innovation and ideas influence and guide others around issues in this area. And thought leadership can be executed by influencing what the broad narrative is around any particular issue and helping to shape that narrative in the conversation that is taking place. And you can do this by sharing your understanding of the issues, your expertise, and information about what is possible and what needs to be done in a particular area or on a particular issue. And in your case, again, it would be issues of science, but those issues can take a very broad, a broad approach. And we'll get into that in a second when we talk about science. And it's not necessarily specifically about what's coming out of the lab. In fact, your work as a science thought leader will really be to move your work beyond the lab and out into the general public. But one thing to keep in mind in terms of building your presence as a thought leader is that scientists are always told that they are supposed to remain neutral. They let the science and the findings speak for themselves. And yes, that is absolutely important. As a thought leader, you take a step beyond, and the messages that you are engaging in are actually action oriented. They're goal oriented. You are making a call to action to your audience to use the information that you present as a scientist to help improve their lives and to improve the world broadly. And another thing that is critically important to know is that your work as a thought leader is audience specific. You may decide that your thought leadership track may focus on influencing your peers, people within the industry, to democratize the science that they're practicing and to make sure that the average person can understand it. You may want to focus on youth and getting them excited about science. You may want to focus on getting policymakers and elected officials to better support science. And you may want to just focus with the general public and helping them become science literate and understanding how the work that you're doing actually affects their daily lives. Thought leadership can feel intimidating when you're first trying to jump into it, particularly if you're a young scientist. You may think that you don't have enough publications, but that you actually need to start building that presence now. And the good news about it is that it's an incremental process in terms of building your presence and your brand. And you can start by asking yourself, what is your expertise, right? You choose an area of interest and a platform to build your voice on. So it may be social media, it may be one-on-one outreach, it may be through creating memes that help people get a quick understanding of the work that you do. But what's most important is that you be consistent. And you can do that through creating content and an activities calendar about how often you want to engage in your thought leadership activity. And as I kind of hinted at a little bit earlier, there are multiple entry points for thought leadership. You can blog, you can write op-eds, you can create memes and social posts, you can engage in outreach. Another thing that is a really interesting approach to thought leadership is, scientists are always creating decks that explain their work. If you can think to create decks that really explain work in a very accessible way, you can make those available through public sharing vehicles. So that's another way. And so finally, I had mentioned earlier that, it can be intimidating to think about being ready to step out into the world and really influence a narrative. And it can be particularly intimidating if you don't see a long track record of people who have similar experiences and similar backgrounds as you. But there are people out there to model yourself after. And I just wanted to share a sample. One that I came across recently who I did not know about and is close to home is biochemist Daley, who is a Queens College graduate. She discovered the connection between high cholesterol and hypertension. And she said something that I thought was really interesting, that I think is pertinent to stepping out to become a thought leadership. And she said that courage is like, it's a habitus. It's a habit of virtue. You get it by courageous acts. It's like you learn to swim by swimming. You learn to courage by couraging. And with that, I am going to pass it off to Coralie Carlson. Also, I'll make this deck available so that the resources that are shared here, everyone can, after the fact, tap into them. So Coralie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, thanks, Sean. Can everyone hear me okay? Does that sound good? Okay. My name is Coralie Carlson. I work in social media here at the Graduate Center. My background is actually in journalism and in using social media as a journalist. But you can go on to the next slide. And sorry, these are gonna drip down slowly, but do you mind just, it's a little awkward sometimes when I'm not the one running the slides. You can just, because there's, yeah, okay. So the first step is to choose what platform you want to use. And you could use more than one platform. But I think the number one thing you have to keep in mind is to go where your audience is, right? So Sean just kind of gave you an overview of different audiences you might be wanting to influence. Think about that. Think about where your audience is. And go ahead, Sean, there's a few, knowing that there's some general advice I can give you, which is Twitter is often a very good platform for this because it does allow you to use links that are clickable. Often we'll want to, as academics, back up our work with links to more information. You don't want to just say a sentence and have nothing to back it up. So it does allow that functionality. You can reach a very large audience. There are niche groups of academics on Twitter, and also it's like the great thing about all social media is a very low cost to entry, right? So you don't have to worry about trying to get some newspaper editor to publish your op-ed. This is something that everybody can just try. So Twitter can be a great one. And Sean, can you go on? Another very appropriate one platform is LinkedIn. Keep in mind that when people are using LinkedIn, it's often because they're looking for another job, but it's really an appropriate platform to share career-based information and to really tout yourself, any promotions or things that you might be working on. Whereas in some other platforms that might seem like bragging, that's not on LinkedIn. That's very appropriate and what the platform is really intended for. And then also Sean had told me that some of you or some people at a previous one of her workshops had asked about using Reddit. And I would say that actually is a good option if you're interested in it. There's many subreddits that are focused on science, general science, published scientific studies, niche groups. There's definitely some places where people are asking each other questions about labs. People are really working on that together, and there's some camaraderie there. The one thing I would say about Reddit, and to a degree this is true for all of the social media platforms that you might use, but you really need to be a member of that community. That's true for all platforms, because if you are really using Twitter as a member of that community, you're going to be much more effective. But the difference is on Reddit, they actually have human beings that are moderating each of these subreddits. And so if you are only using Reddit to promote yourself, and you're not like an actual member of the community in all ways, they will ban you. So what they don't like is when you're just, say, trying to drive links to or clicks to your platform or your own blog or something like that, and you're not sharing other things. I wouldn't let that scare you off at all. If when I'm talking here, you think like, oh, Reddit, now that sounds more interesting to me, then I would encourage you to try it. And then if you think, oh, wow, Twitter, I already have a Twitter account, I didn't think about using that, then go ahead and use that. It needs to be something that you are actually feel kind of excited and comfortable with too. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So the question then becomes, what should you be posting, right? I'm starting with Twitter, but this is true for all platforms. My number one piece of advice of what you should be posting is you can start by complimenting people. It's so easy. It also kind of makes you look like a kingmaker, like you know what is good out there. Also, the person that you compliment or the organization that you compliment then will usually have a very positive reaction, and then they're engaging with you there. So you might, tweet, a link to a publication and say, wow, this is a fantastic article or fantastic study by my colleagues at so-and-so, and they're going to engage with that. And that way, it really keeps everything very positive, and it also makes you look like somebody who knows what's good. So it's really great on all levels. Other things that really do well are slice of life photos and just observations from your work and research. Of course, we'd like you to post, links to your own work that is final, but just kind of letting people see what it's like in your, for you being in the type of science that you're in. I know I'm talking to a diverse group here, so I can't use a real example, but maybe it's in your lab, or maybe it's something that you've been working on. Those sorts of things really do resonate with people. It makes you look much more human, okay? A great tip is just to use photos whenever possible. It's common sense that as you're just a user of social media and things are scrolling down your screen, something with a photo will catch your eye as much as possible, or much more than just text. So at the same time, if you don't have a photo, don't let that stop you from tweeting. It's just if you do have a photo available, use it. Of course, links to your published work definitely help as a thought leader. It doesn't always have to be your work, other interesting articles in your field. And what I would say here is always add a comment that explains why you're posting this. Why did you find it interesting? Okay. Another great thing to do is retweet other people. This is engagement, and it's really key to being successful on social media. So if someone that you work with is also on Twitter and tweet something, you can retweet them and say congratulations, or maybe you have a question, or you can add your own comment, or maybe they tweeted a link to an interesting article in your field and you retweet it and add your own comment saying, well, I also found this interesting, and that's how the conversations start happening. Also, I know sometimes people are uncomfortable sharing personal things publicly, but to whatever degree you do feel comfortable, it is great just to share a little bit of your personality, because people want to engage with a human being. They don't want to engage with just like a brand, right? They want to know like who you are. And I'm not suggesting that, you share even photos of your kids or family members or anything like that. But but there's got to be something that shows your personality and also can just make you seem more human. Maybe it's, you know, I was walking down the sidewalk and I just saw like the first flowers, blooms growing of the year, and I took a picture of it. Now that would be a very appropriate thing for me to tweet, and it would make me seem more like a human being, not someone who always just tweets about my subject area. Oh, another great place to start is pets, where most of us are comfortable sharing about our pets, and it really does make you look like very humanizing. And so people want to engage with a real person, and that makes you seem like a real person. Here are just some examples from the ASRC's Twitter account. This was from, I believe, 2 years ago, and these were 3 of the best tweets of the entire year from this account in terms of how many people saw the tweet. And you can see the first one there is just members of the lab standing in an elevator. This is the slice of life that I was talking about. And yet it really resonated with people. Lots of people liked it, lots of people retweeted it, lots of people responded to it. So the second one there is a great example of a compliment type of thing, where someone did something great, and you don't have to be the one getting that $9 million grant. You can congratulate them on it. You can compliment them on that and say, well deserved. You could see a tweet like this, you can retweet it with your own compliment. And another one here is someone who defended her dissertation. And that's another sort of thing that you will come across in your work regularly, and is a great sort of thing to share. It's both complimentary, it's positive, it shows real people, and we shared this obviously was before the pandemic. We share these same photos of Zoom dissertation defenses, and they're also extremely popular. So LinkedIn is just a little bit different in that you can just kind of focus more on your career, and you can, any sort of successes you have, any sort of awards that you get. Sean, you can just bring all of these up. I don't want to spend too much time here. Any sort of accomplishments that you have, any new jobs that you get, you don't have to worry about seeming like you're bragging. Like Twitter is kind of more of like the water cooler where you talk to your friends. LinkedIn is like a job fair where you really just like tout your achievements. And so you would definitely be able to use LinkedIn to post links to any of your studies, any of things that you've been working on, new jobs that you might get, new fellowships, grants, anything like that. It would be a very appropriate place to say, just so happy to share that I've won this or that. Okay. And then one question that everybody has is how to get more followers, right? Because you're not going to be very effective if you're not reaching people, right? You can be tweeting, and if any of you have experience with Twitter, I'm sure you have had the experience where you tweet something and you hit publish, and then nothing really happens, and you're not even really sure if anyone saw it. It's like tweeting into the wind. So you need to get more followers to start really having an impact. And the best way to do that is just engage. And by that, I mean you're going to follow other accounts. You're going to retweet other people. You're going to reply to other people. And really this is where really being an engaged member of the community is going to make you more effective and get you more followers, and your tweets will get seen by more people over time. I'd say the best practices for posting is to post at least every day. That would make you look like you actually have an active account. If you can't do it every day, I would say 3 times a week, just to make sure that people can look at your account and see that you have an active account, right? Now, Twitter is not Reddit. You will not get kicked off if all you're doing is self-promotion, but you probably won't have that effective an account either. And you should definitely start with your friends. So I remember when I was starting a new Twitter account, I actually walked up to my friends in the office I was working at that time, and I kind of stood behind them and said, "Hi, I just started a new Twitter account. Would you mind following me? I know you're on Twitter," and kind of stood over them until they did it. And you don't need to be quite that annoying about it, but getting your friends to follow you and following your friends is a great way to start. Start with your actual in-person social circles, helps on social media. And can we get the next slide? And finally, if you're wondering who to follow, here are just some accounts here on the side on Twitter that would be great for you to follow the Graduate Center, the ASRC, CUNY Central. The Dean of Sciences is very active on Twitter and is a great ally and friend to all of us who are trying to promote the sciences on Twitter. And there's also Some Research, which is a CUNY-based account that writes, publication that writes about published research from all CUNY campuses. And then also I put together a little list there if you want to. That should be an easy enough bit.ly for you to either type in, or you can get the deck afterwards. Just some accounts that may be of interest to you, different scientists and science organizations. All right.
Thank you, Coralie. So up next is Kendra Krueger. Kendra, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi there. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about crafting your voice and bringing your perspectives and opinions into different spaces, and using education as a mechanism and a channel to get your voice and your thoughts out into the world. Next slide, Sean. I guess I should explain myself. So I'm the science education coordinator at the CUNY's ASRC. So I run our outreach and education and community engagement plans. My background is also in electrical engineering, and I founded a platform for research and advocacy called For Love and Science. And so basically, you know, for me, I got into to mixing up the conversation in science and starting my own platform because I was fired up about the disconnection between doing science and learning about our external world and our internal, and how it's disconnected from exploring our internal world. And for me, these things are never really separate. And I wanted to have more conversations about who we are as people in the science research that we do. So this was always kind of an existential question that was starting to emerge in my mind as a graduate student in electrical engineering. So one thing that I recommend when you're getting into thought leadership and thinking about, well, what do I have to say? Well, what's getting you fired up? Is there something that you think is just so totally cool about the work that you do, or something that you think is so totally wrong about the community that we're in? And I added this quote from Foucault because I was listening to this there's a Philosophize This podcast. If you listen to that, there's one about Foucault, and he talks so much about thought leadership and about how knowledge and truth really isn't as concrete as we think it is, or stationary, but is really driven by the thought leaders of our community and of our society. And who are the people who are the loudest with their voices? And that becomes kind of the collective consciousness and the collective ideology that exists in our world. So it's important for people who come from diverse backgrounds and have many different perspectives to be part of that conversation. Next slide. So how do you get started? I mean, for me, so I had all of these existential questions, and I just started by having different potlucks and meetings in my living room to talk about these things and to really get down to the ideas and to figure out how to articulate the ideas that I wanted to talk about, because they're a little bit more abstract. And if you're somebody who's kind of pushing the boundaries of what these conversations are, it's sometimes hard to build the narrative or build the story, and to be able to feel confident about the perspectives that you're trying to advocate for or to talk about in the world. So for me, you know, I was doing both brainstorming groups in my graduate department talking about ethics and philosophy of science, and started to have these dinner sessions as well, where we would talk about these ideas. So start talking, just having more of these conversations within your community and figuring out like who is aligned with you and who your allies are, so that you can start to build that community, which may be something that you're doing on social media, as Coralie was talking about, or also, as we'll hear from Ingrid, like doing that more with these advocacy organizations that already have platforms. Next. So these are more things that Sean kind of already touched on and how to get started. But for me, when I I went to grad school, I was studying electrical engineering, I started having these existential questions. I then didn't really know where to take that. I thought maybe I'd get into science communications, but didn't really know what that meant. Ended up working in industry more for a while. But I started to just get this itch of like, I need to connect with other perspectives and other ideas. So, you know, I started to look up different meetup groups that were talking about science philosophy. You know, it could be if you're interested more on like, you know, neuroscience or nanoscience, like there's different, like there's Nano NYC is a group here that is more of like a social group, but also career development that you can like start talking about these issues in different spaces. I also started volunteering at the public radio station. I was living in Boulder, Colorado. So I joined the volunteer staff for a science radio show there. And that was a great excuse. I highly recommend getting into podcasting or blogging or radio or vlogging, because it's a great excuse to interview people who inspire you and to create those connections and build your network. And to reach out and be like, hey, I would love to interview you for this, or to reach out to other folks who do interviews if you already kind of have more of a strong voice already, to say, hey, I'd love to speak on your series or talk to you about this, and connect with other influencers in that way to sort of cross support each other. So that's connected to, you know, interest groups on social media that I think Coralie and also Ingrid will talk about more. As I said, volunteer, get out into these different spaces with different organizations and outreach organizations, and just keep talking to people. Attend lots and lots of events, like any events in these areas that sort of align with your vision. Go to them and always ask questions. Like something that I always made sure that I was like at the mic, you know, getting my face out there, getting my ideas out there, hearing about other people's ideas, asking to follow up, like, you know, just having that energy to sort of amplify these different ideas and evolve the thoughts as they go, and set up meetings. Yeah, as I was saying. So then, how does that then translate into education? So I think educators are some of the best disruptors in our society. Like, we really have this voice and channel to the masses, and also to folks who are ready for new perspectives and ready to learn in new ways. So for me, I worked at like in all of the divisions. I've taught elementary school, middle school, high school kids. I've taught graduate classes, undergraduate students. And it's just a matter, I think all of those spaces, even with the younger kids, are great spaces to hone your message, because teaching younger kids is the biggest challenge in learning how to be a translator and to like be really specific, but also creative in the way that you're thinking. So even if you don't necessarily want to go deeper into education, I still highly recommend taking some experience. Like, even if you know people with kids, if you can just like, hey, I'd love to like do a lesson with your class and or with your kids' class, and connect me with the teachers, or if there's a school in your local district to connect with. And additionally, if you're here at CUNY, we run an illumination space program, which is a field trip program for middle school, high school, and undergraduate students. You can connect with me, and we do a training also that helps you to craft your story. So to talk about your journey getting into science, what are the things that inspire you, making those connections, which is also a great training exercise, because part of what getting into connecting with lots of different organizations and being somebody, and I'll talk more about like starting to do more freelance gigs and doing speaking, but to get to that point, people will always ask you for your origin story. So you need to craft this, like, what was the transformational moment or the inspirational moment that got you to where you are today? Like, people want to hear that kind of arc of the story. So it's important to sort of learn how to talk about that journey as this aspirational thing. And as well, that you can start to craft, like, so much of being, I think, a thought leader is crafting different stories and narratives and being storytellers in these different ways. So here's just an example of once I went from kind of teaching in these small spaces in just community spaces and starting to like small groups with people that I knew, I started to build a curriculum or build these different lesson plans and build narratives. And then I could pitch them. So I started to pitch some of these workshop ideas to conferences, in academic spaces for different student groups. So there's so many different student groups out there, whether they're clubs, student clubs, or advocacy groups within universities, or even at corporate companies that are doing professional development. So I did one at CU Boulder. They had a diversity and equity club for graduate students. They hosted me. Also, the engineering department, I did a workshop for them on transformative engineering. I did one at Stanford about race identity, gender, and connections with quantum physics, and blurring what does it mean to blur our edges or to have solid edges in these ideas, and just connecting with these spaces and starting to pitch these ideas in different places. Next slide. So what other kinds of gigs can you get into this like education space? So once you have sort of crafted this message or this story or this narrative or a curriculum, you can start to do more freelance gigs in different spaces. So you can be a panelist, like in this kind of way, for conferences. You can be a guest speaker for different classes. So that's also, you can connect with other professors who are teaching classes and be like, hey, I'd love to offer a lecture for you in this way. You can MC events like for conferences or other larger advocacy events that are happening. You can also adjunct. Highly recommend teaching, even if you're working as a scientist in industry, you can still do kind of part-time education and as an adjunct, working in a university, and teaching classes on specific topics. And you can start to propose again and pitch these workshops for conferences, seminars, academic programs, corporate, and nonprofit. What else do I have in here? And and so when you have more of this content that you've built, that you have aggregated, you can build a platform. So for me, I built this platform called For Love and Science, which was all about research, education, technology, liberation, but using science as a tool for liberation, as a tool for opening our minds and opening ourselves and learning about the evolution of our external spaces and the evolution of our internal spaces simultaneously. And then, but next slide, you should also figure out, all of these things that, maybe happen in different order. It was also important to me to align with other institutions and other platforms. It's also good to have some institutional structure and foundation. So part of the reason why I came to the ASRC is I was really aligned with the vision of doing interdisciplinary research and the opportunities and possibilities that are available in this space. And so in the role that I play right now as the science education coordinator, I get to be at this interface between the public and the scientists. So I help to teach both of these groups of people. I have the ability to run trainings and workshops with scientists to start thinking more about these ideas, but also interact with the public and get these messages out there, but also get the voices of the public and the youth into the scientific community, so that there's more holistic way of thinking and also perspectives around science and education. And I think that might be the end, but I just want to pipe, somebody dropped Skype a Scientist. Yeah, Skype a Scientist, and New York Academy of Sciences also has science residency programs where you can be like a science in residence at different high schools throughout the city. And thank you, Ingrid. So there's a lot of different programs out there to help connect you with schools, and you can also connect with me, and we'll have more resources about that on our website soon. So
Great.
thank you.
Great, thank you, Kendra. So now we're going to turn it over to Ingrid Paredes. Ingrid, please take it away.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. So my name is Ingrid Paredes, and I'm the co-chair of March for Science New York City, which I'll explain to you in a few moments, as well as a grad student at NYU Tandon School of Engineering in the Chemical Engineering Department. So really excited to see other grad students interested in science communication and advocacy. A bit about me. So I'm going to talk a bit broadly about organizing the scientific community and how the skills and I think like personal evolution that Kendra really touched on kind of led me into the space and how that journey kind of happened for me. So yeah, I'm a chemical engineer by training. That's also what I did my undergrad and master's in at Rutgers over in New Jersey. And to be frank, I really didn't think that I was going to enter science communication or science policy when I was an undergraduate, deciding to pursue engineering as a career. I, thought I was gonna, work in like consumer products, like learn mass and heat balances and kind of have my career and go on. But I think to Kendra's point, as I started to learn about my field more and see what was going on behind the scenes, like in the lab, what was required to actually like bring these consumer products and even like the energy in particular that we do in our day-to-day lives, and what that kind of disconnect is between like research and the impact that engineering can really have on society, which is why I think I went into engineering in the first place, to really be involved with science, but in a way that can really touch people's lives, and particularly around sustainability. So for chemical engineers, this can come in a lot of forms, right? Down to the kinds of materials we put into our products that end up in our bodies, either in the form of pollution or, skincare, whatever it is, or the food that we eat. The amount of energy required to actually form these things, whether we're at the R&D stage in the lab or at the industrial scale, or even on the waste management, like where does all these, after EHS comes to our lab, where does it go? What happens to all of that? In my case, I've been particularly interested in energy problems, and that's what I've been doing my research in at NYU. And Sean, if you go to the next slide, as we know, this has really become a forefront issue in the last couple of years, particularly after this UN IPCC report came out in 2018, which Sean, if you just click the next two animations, we know is like the climate crisis is here. It's okay. The climate crisis is here, and we know that it's really becoming an issue. And I think like a lot of people in the last 4 years, there's been like a lot of political awakening, particularly among the scientific community. And Sean, if you go to the next slide, that's really where I started to find my voice, where I felt like, like I'm not the only person. And I knew I wasn't the only person who cared about speaking up about the relationship between science and society. We see it even in our PIs, right? Having to apply for grants, the pressure that's on them, the work-life balance that science often stresses, and how that translates even down the line, from basic sciences to the way that we talk about science and think about scientific literacy and its role in decision-making, as well as just large-scale issues like we've seen, throughout this pandemic, which I'm sure we all sympathize with, at least personally, and really started to find a voice there. And that really started, to Kendra's point, like having conversations. Like as I mentioned, didn't think I was going to go into science communication, but my friend Omar, who ended up being the co-chair of March for Science New York City with me, was always a very vocal person and really involved in activism as an undergrad. And when we became friends at NYU, we started having these conversations, just one-on-one together, talking about our own experiences. And what we found is the more people that we had these conversations with, which literally were the other people in the conference room at the time, that there was really something like momentum to build there. And so we started going to rallies. We started to not just go to rallies about science, but also like local community rallies. We started talking to Black Lives Matter organized community fridge and mutual aid programs that have been really at the forefront now during the pandemic. And then seeing that, we started to see like, that as scientists, we have skills that, yes, can get us, we use them every day in our lives, like to publish papers, collect data, really do these like cutting edge research and tackle these like cutting edge research problems, but also can lend themselves to the community. And Kendra's point is like great, like educators as disruptors, because that's really like where we started to initially find our space. Like we can bring science to the people and out of the lab in that way. And that's really where we started to find this niche between advocacy and outreach. And then Shani can hit the next slide. And I think there, and I will say like, I kind of like wrapped it up in like 60 seconds, but it did take a lot of soul searching for where we fit in. And a lot of that beginning was listening to what other groups were doing, listening to what the scientists in our, our department, our communities were interested in, and then finding a niche there. And afterwards it was like, okay, like, like we have this relationship with the activist community, we have this relationship with the scientific community, and we know what we want to do. We know that we want to be this bridge between the two, but now what can we actually commit? And that's kind of like where I had to start to like think about. I think it goes to Coralie's point about like knowing your messaging, knowing what your expertise is. It's also important to know like what you can actually provide to like, take care of yourself and be as productive as you can be and meaningful in your work and intentional as your work. And sometimes that is aligned with your knowledge expertise, right? Like in my case, I'm a chemical engineer studying nanotech, specifically for energy problems. So a lot of the work that I've been involved with has been like climate advocacy, teaching people about energy problems. But in other cases, it's just time, or in some cases, if you're able to, like donating money, donating resources to organizations that really align with what you believe in. And what I mean by time is, yeah, thanks, Sean, perfect timing, is this is a graphic that I didn't make. It's from Sunrise Movement, which if you're familiar with, is a climate organization that's really youth-led and has been really vocal in the last 2 years and helped the climate crisis really come into like mainstream political discussion since 2018. And what they did was break down the different kinds of organizers that they have in their groups. And when I looked at this, I was trying to find where I kind of like might have fit in. And to my surprise, I found myself thinking about a lot of the things that I do in lab every day. And that really helped me, I think, and also with like the volunteers that I've been working with, think about how as scientists, we can really take our scientist hats and bring them to places outside of the lab. So Sean, you can click through the next couple of animations. I'll just walk through them individually. Oh, sorry, you can go back. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, communications, right? I mean, we're doing it right now, talking to each other, but also like every week for lab meeting, right? You're preparing slides, you're writing papers, you're giving talks. It's about knowing your audience, as Coralie said, whether you're communicating on social media or in a childhood classroom, you have to like know where you're at. And some people, and that takes time to build a voice and craft that. But some people really enjoy that work, and that can really become a passion, hopefully, for some of you who are here today. But also just a lot of the back end work that we do, right? Like hosting is like, facilitating collaborations, what's called coordinating group meetings. Really like, I feel like a bulk of your PhD is like planning and then troubleshooting, executing. This comes to really knowing how to like manage your time and also manage a team. So being a recruitment lead in that way. And then a pledge tracker, right, is about like managing your data. Like, like it's just like really looking at spreadsheets, whether it's like, a phone bank, phone numbers of like people that to call for a campaign, or looking at, like absorbance data for your nanoparticles. It's all about like the volume of data and how you really think about organizing and presenting it. And action lead, I know might seem, not as exciting as like leading a thesis and being in lab every day, but I think it does take the same kind of courage to really put yourself at the forefront of like kind of like the front line of your research, right? You're the one who has expertise in this field. You're the one who's passionate about this field. And even for myself, like I'm not a climate scientist, but I know that I care passionately about this issue. I know that I have expertise that can be lent to empower people who have, who also care about this issue, and then kind of like pushing that there kind of like, I think kind of worked the other way. It gave me more confidence in my thesis research than the other way around, but kind of the same mindset there. And then Sean, yeah, go ahead. And then from there, it's just about finding groups that align with your interests. I've listed a bunch here, and there are a couple that were listed in the chat that are also really excellent that I've worked with or really resonate with. But Sean, if you click to the next. Yeah, the real thing I think that really helps is just to look locally, like I mentioned, and like Coralie and Kendra mentioned too, it's like conversations starting with your friends. Sometimes like there are local, sometimes there's always organizing going on that you can get involved with. And even if you're just like listening in the beginning or just doing a little bit, like helping with like email spreadsheets or whatever it is, all of that counts in the end, like building from like an individual voice to a collective voice. And you could start right in like your workplace, like Kendra had mentioned, like a diversity and equity initiative at UC Boulder. A lot of those have been popping up in the last year after shutdown STEM. That's just one great example. And yeah, from there, I think it's like a bit of an iterative process. But the important thing I think for me is like knowing that, I think thinking about like the way that my trajectory has gone is that you don't need to like have all the answers, which I think a lot of scientists feel compelled to like be an expert in the field before we open our mouths. But as grad students, right, we know that there's a lot of unanswered questions, and the same goes for when you're getting involved with building your voice. It's a bit of an experiment, and it'll be like a feedback loop over time. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to open up for Q&As, but before we do, I just want to share a couple of quick things. So in this presentation, which I'm going to post, there are links to some resources for you, both in terms of outreach organizations, places, and you can begin to think about using your voice, and as well as some tools for creating content. And then here's a link to our SciComms Academy, which will also provide a good deal of information on some of this work. So now we're going to open it up for questions. I'm going to check the chat, but if anyone wants to jump in, just raise your hand or speak up, and we can start a conversation. Okay.
I don't have a question, but I can start with a discussion maybe.
Great.
Thank you, Kendra, Ingrid, Coralie, for all your talks. And Kendra, when I was listening to yours and you said that to get your voice heard, having a loud voice is very important to get that heard. Do you have any tips and advice for folks that don't necessarily want to have a loud voice, but really want to contribute to the cause?
Good question. I suppose like you don't necessarily have to be aggressive. Maybe it came off as that that by being loud you have to be aggressive, which I think I did have to be in some spaces in order to like, either because as you know, in the scientific community, there are a lot of dominating voices that will either try to take over the conversation at a conference, or not really ask a question but really be there to just talk about their philosophy, which I think in ways I try to emulate. I'm like, okay, I can talk about my philosophy, but I'm going to come up here and promulgate my and I definitely have done that in some spaces, which whether that's problematic or not. I think in smaller ways though of connecting on with an individual, so it's smaller. There's some quote that I heard that it's more of like a philosophical like parable or something, but it's like, count not the number of people that you reach with your message or with your light, or that it's really you can be a thought leader just by like having a healthy conversation with one person or with a group of people and creating a community in a different way. If you're working like Gia in nanoscience to help uplift that group of people and do what little things, and as Ingrid talked about, all those roles that are necessary to have a group that can be functional and also like thrive in a healthy way, I think is a way to sort of like help in subversively grease the wheels in ways. And I think also like it gives, when we're in these different roles, it allows us to sort of pipe up in small ways and sort of like sometimes drop ideas in people's minds in more subtle ways that can then propagate out, I think, as a strategy as well. If anybody else wants to add to that.
No, I think that says a lot. Anyone else want to comment or share some resources or ask a question?
Oh, I see Carly asked about pricing yourself with speaking. So this is a great question, and I want to drop a link actually. 500 Women Scientists just sent around a newsletter doing a survey about pricing, and they have a whole I forget what they called it, sort of like guide. So I'm going to find that and I'll drop it, but we can continue. It's tough. It's a big controversial thing of like, sometimes you gotta wait for them to offer you. If they don't, I always have to ask, if somebody invites me to speak to something, is there a budget? That's kind of like my first thing. Is there a budget for this? Or what is your budget for this? And then they come back, and then I try to negotiate up. Always try to negotiate up.
Yeah, no, and there's a great follow-up question. I think this is also from Carly. She says, when did you decide your content was sellable? And that's a great one. So, you know, you spend a lot of time as a thought leader offering up free information, right? And you may decide that that is going to be your role throughout your career, but then you may reach a point where you realize that you're offering up information that is really useful and it has some value to it. So, Kendra, I think you've
Yeah, I think part of it for me was when I got financially desperate. I had to push myself into the, like, I gotta get paid for this stuff, you know. I don't know. Like, I think I tried in the beginning when I was still unsure of my message. I think I would offer it for free because I was like, I'm still trying this out, and I have like this experimental. But once I did it like 2 or 3 times, I'm like, I have this down. And so I know that I'm going to deliver a product, and I'm going to deliver an experience. So now it can be something that I charge for. And my sister actually helped me create like a pricing sheet that is now like way out of date. I think I created it like 6 years ago, but I can drop an example of that in the chat too.
Corley, this one is for you. She asked, does anyone have advice for making your voice heard when everyone is now online and it can be hard to stand out?
Yes, absolutely. I have some actual specific guidance on this because we're all probably working with relatively small Twitter accounts, right? So we don't have 1 million followers. And how do you get people to actually see your tweets? The best tip that I have for this is to include handles of relative people or organizations to whatever it is that you're tweeting. Okay, so if I am going to tweet a link to an article in the New York Times about my area of interest in science, and I'm going to say, hey, this is a really great article because it points out X, Y, and Z, I will also include the handle of the person who wrote that story. Okay, it's relevant. I'm not spamming anybody. And I might include the handles of some other scientists that I know that work in this area that would be really interested in seeing this. And what's going to happen is they're each going to get notifications. So I know that they will see it. And most likely, because I've been careful and I'm only tagging the people who are relevant, they will probably retweet it. Okay, the author of that article will probably retweet it, right? And he or she will have more followers than I do. And so one way that you can get your tweets seen by more people is if it has anything to do with your work at the Graduate Center, include the handle of the Graduate Center, which is one of those I had on the slide. And I retweet everything that's relevant, everything. So you might have 1,000 followers on Twitter, and the Graduate Center has 16,000 followers on Twitter. So now you've gotten your seen by, you know, many. It's not going to be 16,000 probably, but many more people, right? This is the exact same strategy that I use trying to get our tweets at the Graduate Center seen by more people, right? So I include the handles, not just of big accounts, but anyone who's really relevant that I think would really be likely to engage with it, be likely to retweet it, be interested in what I'm tweeting. And you can really make your small accounts just get seen by a lot of people if you're really strategic about just tagging appropriate, relevant, interested people. Even if I'm just tweeting like a funny cat joke, you know, like a little meme or something like that, I will include my 2 or 3 friends that I know on Twitter that I know like cat jokes as much as I do. Now I know that they see them, and they'll probably retweet it too, you know. But that is one way to make yourself really stand out and get seen by more people, at least on Twitter. Okay.
That's great. So I have a question for Ingrid in a minute, but I just want to point out that I hope everyone is looking at the chat, because there's some good resources that have been shared there. And who is this? Sajal shares a site, Massive Science, which people can write, which scientists can write for, pitch stories. Another one that's good for that is The Conversation, that will allow you to also write. Ingrid, I'm really interested in knowing how involvement in March for Science has really aided, you talked a lot about, finding your voice, but are there some concrete examples of how it has aided you and provided opportunities for you to develop your role as a thought leader?
Yeah, definitely. I think just the practice of communicating really helped me a lot. I think that it's kind of like an iterative process, like Kendra was mentioning. Like in the beginning, when we were running, March for Science really began, I guess a bit more of context, was like a single day event. It was like, we are scientists, we are a community, and we care about advocating for science. But science it's everything, right? It's broad, and science advocacy looks different, whether you're in New York City or you're at NYU, or whether you're, in Florida or California or wherever it is. And really the challenge was for our group and for myself was to think about like, okay, what does science mean for us? And what does it mean to really push the boundaries of being a scientist? And with March for Science, really in the beginning, it began with, I think the calls that we are all familiar with, like recognizing that funding for science is important, that scientific literacy is important. But then for us also thinking about like our experience as scientists, like, as like whole people, or also like the injustices that the scientific community has perpetuated and also dealt with, like scientific racism, sexism in STEM, and how those conversations inform, our lives as researchers. So a lot of the work that we've been doing is trying to bring what we've been learning from our activist groups and activist friends, such as most recently, the biggest example is like talking about abolition, what it means for climate solutions, what it means for science to really divest from systems of oppression that, I think we've all operated under, but in institutions tend to be, I think, I'm not sure if the right word is, like maybe it's like a bit more opaque, the way that it's affecting a way, like the way that we operate as scientists. So that's been kind of how we've been pushing the needle that way.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So I think we've got one more question. Mark Poppentalk.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you again to all of our speakers. I thought this was an amazing event. I guess I wanted to ask, I think the work that you are all doing, or especially Ingrid and Kendra, also you, Corley, but the work that you're doing is really inspiring and enlightening. But I know many of us are grad students here, and how do you justify this extra work to either yourself or to your PIs when there's so much other, like we're in graduate school for research. How do you kind of justify that? Maybe justify isn't the right word, but I think you get what I mean.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think for me, so when I started my PhD, like when I was looking for an advisor, I'm in my 5th year now, so it's a bit of a long time, but I always just tried to be honest about like what I went into my PhD to do. And in my case, like I always knew that I had this interest in science beyond doing lab work. I just didn't realize that science communication might be like the outlet for it. And then I think from there, it was just like setting boundaries like between me and my PI. Like I know that I think in the beginning, this was definitely a rockier thing where I felt like I was doing a lot and doing too much, especially I was finding my voice. I think the number one thing is like for a PhD, you are, yes, like publishing papers, you are committing to the group's mission in a lot of ways, like, doing your research in the lab, but it is also your time to develop the skills that is like shaping your career. It's like very personal in that way. And I think that at the end of the day, like what you get is like not really like your thesis, I mean, you do get your thesis, but it's really like, you know, at the end of the day, you are a researcher, and the kind of researcher that you want to be and the problems that you want to try to solve is like how I try to think about it. So for me, like, you know, my quantitative, like nanotech research is one thing, but then my advocacy work is another equally important part of my career. And that's just kind of how I try to manage communicating that to my advisor. But having a supportive advisor is like the number one thing, I think, because I think a lot of people are being more receptive to grad students taking on this work, but it does take a bit of conversation to start if your PI hasn't been engaging in it, like in the first place.
And the one thing I'd like to add to that, and Kendra can attest to this, you know, this kind of work is becoming more and more important to PIs getting grants, right? So having grad students in their lab who can keep them connected and can help run this kind of work that will help them get the grants is important. It's really important. So
Can I add something to this point? So I've been involved in a lot of efforts in the early career researcher advocacy. And I think there is a big cultural shift in this notion that you have to be in the lab and you have to be publishing, even when you're applying for fellowships, even when you're going for tenure track positions. I think those days are gone when, you know, all that counts is how much you have published. I think lots of departments themselves and even, you know, funding agencies themselves are promoting, you know, a lot of community engagement, a lot of advocacy work, and you know, just being part of the change. And I think I'm speaking from my own experience where you know, I have received a lot of reward on other things that I have done. And it's not that it's not part of science that we do, because now even in universities, when you teach, you have programs on communications, you know, as part of graduate programs. So if you're like a graduate student here, I think don't be in that mindset, or if your mentor doesn't support it, it's never wrong. It's always going to be helpful in your career at some point.
okay, well, we are actually a few minutes over. I think this has been a really fruitful session, so I hope everyone gains some. I'm gonna hold for just a second because there were some really interesting comments going on in the chat. So anyone who wants a minute to save it, to grab it and save it, I'm gonna hold for a minute. But I thank you all. I've learned a lot today. So yeah. And our next event will be April 30th, and we're gonna it'll be on diversity and equity in the sciences.
And thank you, Sean, for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you.